Greetings, brave heroes of the Republic. My name is FailureToReport. And have you finished assembling your squadron? Wait, squadron? Isn't this game pitching 5 versus 5? Great, so Star Wars lore isn't the only thing that EA Disney doesn't understand. Roger, Roger. Oh boy. Alright, so most of you know me as a Star Citizen hater of the YouTubes, which is fine. I'll get a shirt made. But let me tell you a story about how I got suckered into Star Citizen. You see, it all started when Chris Roberts pitched his BS-filled Kickstarter trailer stuffed full of dreams and nostalgia about being a fighter jock in a large universe where you were trying to make your way. As a hardcore veteran of X-Wing vs. TIE Fighter back when it was on Microsoft Zone's gaming platform, back before games were all launched through apps and you just joined lobbies through your browser and then played random matches with a few people over and over while also trading ICQ numbers to reconnect with guys that you had a good time playing with, Star Citizen appealed to me as the next evolution from X-Wing vs. TIE Fighter because, to Chris' marketing credit, it absolutely seemed like the gaming industry had abandoned us sci-fi fighter jocks, and I desperately yearned for a rebirth of that genre. What sucked me into Star Citizen like a collapsed star was the idea of being a fighter pilot, but even more so commanding my own Star Destroyer parallel Idris. Running the command deck and repelling the enemy, my point here is that I didn't want to back Star Citizen, I wanted a Star Wars fighter and fleet game. But Star Citizen was the closest thing to the dream Star Wars game I had ever seen, and nobody else was really touching the space genre with a 100-foot pole. Now, to further context before I get into this game's announcement, I am a Star Wars fucking nerd from hell. When I was in middle school back in the 90s, I took a class working in my school library so I could get the librarian to order all the new Star Wars Expanded Universe books and read them behind the counter between stocking the shelves, updating the Rolodex, and changing out the newspaper rods each day. When my kids got old enough, I offloaded more old Star Wars toys on them than we dropped bombs in Iraq. I used to live and breathe Star Wars. So when I say I'm literally the target demographic of a Star Wars fighter game, especially with VR support, I want you to understand how serious I am. I play video games the majority of my week, I own multiple gaming computers, a VR set, and I still embarrass my girlfriend by wearing Star Wars print shirts in public frequently. Alright, that's enough outing myself as a hopeless basement-dwelling virgin, so let's talk about Star Wars Squadrons, the latest money printer coming out of Electronic Arts in the partnership with Disney. Now, I would love to show the trailer as I talk about this game, but I have been copyright claimed by Disney so many times that I would need to have a degree in rocket science to add it all up. For literally anything. Playing Battlefront 2 campaign claimed. Playing Star Wars The Old Republic with the soundtrack on claimed. Showing a few seconds of a Star Wars movie clip claimed. People think the Empire was evil? Fucking move over, cause here comes Disney. So as a disclaimer, what you're going to be seeing in the background today is Battlefront 2 footage of the game mode Starfighter Assault. While it isn't what I would like to be showing, I'm not risking getting in more shit with YouTube or the Disney Empire by digesting the trailer for Squadrons. But I think that works out alright because we're going to be discussing Starfighter Assault a little bit as well today, and both games are pretty similar. So, Squadrons, what do we know? Electronic Arts is pitching Squadrons as a standalone fighter game where you pilot one of the few different classes of classic Star Wars ships from the X-Wing and TIE Fighter to the Y-Wing and TIE Bomber. If you can't tell by my reference to the twin ion engine ships, you will be able to play as both of the Republic and Imperial pilots. This makes me very happy inside. While you could obviously play as an Imperial or a Republic player in Battlefront 2, this stands out for recent Disney titles as Squadron offers two different campaigns, an Imperial and Republic one. That's right, kiddo. Somebody call the goddamn Galactic News Network. We're getting a Star Wars game this decade that doesn't have you starting out as the Imperials to realize, I'm the bad guy. I need to defect and go help the hippies be space terrorists. A lot of viewers know I'm a big Star Wars fan, and they've been asking me for takes on recent Star Wars titles, and I usually answer with, I don't know. The franchise has kind of died off for me after Disney took over. While the bastardized movies lay solely at Disney's feet, the games aren't bad by definition, but I'm so tired of every Star Wars story-based game I've ever played being so black and white that if you play as an Imperial at all, You're almost always the super special person who realizes you're actually part of a big evil empire that's mean to people, and now you're gonna go join the rebellion and prove you're actually one of the good apples. Fucking yawn. Look, I'm gonna make a parallel to Warhammer really quick. It's not a perfect fit, but you should get my point. In the Warhammer universe, there are many factions, but two of the most popular ones in the 40k universe are the big badass Space Marines and their chaos-tainted fallen brothers, the Chaos Space Marines. This may come off as a huge shock to some game developers, but the bad guys kind of have like a huge following of fans. So it's kind of the same thing with Star Wars. Further, Star Wars isn't just black and white like Warhammer, where the Chaos Space Marine legions are literally just evil. Before morons like Kathleen Kennedy took over Star Wars for Disney, there was an entire expanded universe that talked about the Empire and its citizens and members. Stormtroopers weren't all just magically clones, they were recruited soldiers of the Empire. The Sith wasn't just evil, like some fucking cartoon. Yeah, they were aggressors, they started a war with the Old Republic and lost, but do you know what happened when they lost? The Republic went out for a little vacay to Sith space and tried to literally exterminate an entire species. Yeah, your good guy hippies were into a side kink of genocide when the mood struck. No big deal. So, is it fair for the Sith to hold a grudge throughout the Star Wars timeline? Yeah, I think that's probably pretty appropriate. I know I would. Imagine if we had won World War II and then said, okay, time to go purge Germany. They attacked and started the war, and now that we've defeated them, the only obvious solution is a total board clear. Now, I'm not saying the Emperor was a good guy, and like literally every government, both in real life as well as Republic versus Empire, they all have corrupted leaders at various levels. The Senate had corrupt politicians, the Empire had corrupt and power-hungry mobs. Look, power corrupts. What I am saying, however, is that it should take little effort for a high school writing enthusiast to be able to put out a narrative for a video game where you play as an Imperial soldier or pilot trying to defend your comrades, home system, and so forth from people that could easily be viewed as terrorists. As a result, Star Wars games have really lost a lot of appeal to me over the last 2 decades because it's always the same story. Empire bad, rebel good. So, when Squadrons pitched a campaign playing as a member of a... I'm not calling it a squadron because that's moronic. Wing? Flight? I'll admit I wasn't Air Force, so I'm not positive on what their equivalent of a 5-man team would be called, but I know from both Star Wars and general military experience that a squadron is way bigger than 5 pilots. But I guess Star Wars Wing didn't have the same ring to it. Point being, I was really excited for the chance to play a new Star Wars game where you are the Empire and it isn't going to be muddied with some forced, oh, suddenly I realize the Empire is bad, so I'm going to change teams now. Okay? That's cool with you guys? Before I get into talking about the actual game, I'm going to go ahead and dust off my straight white male toxic gamer badge really quick because, of course, that's what I would have to be to say this. Fuck you, EA, for once again forcing your bullshit virtue signaling into Star Wars. I was amped to see an Imperial faction as playable in the campaign, and then, of course, the player character is female, and so is the captain of your flagship, and why not, the fucking admiral commanding your team, because, of course, when Disney took over, only women's could pull the Empire together after the Battle of Endor. Sure. I mean, fuck it, we've raped Star Wars pretty hard in the last 5 years, what's another round of canon butchering? The Empire were xenophobes, and women were rarely part of combat arms. I mean, taking the movies aside, where literally there are 0 women in the Empire during the original trilogy, even in the expanded universe, women serving in the Empire trying to make their way in the officer corps were incredibly mistreated, mocked, and held back. And these were usually characters hand-placed by very, very high-ranking members of the Empire, like Mara Jade serving the Emperor directly, or Commander/Admiral Dela getting to where she did in the Imperial Navy because, oh, guess what? She became Moff Tarkin's mistress to get there. Now, I can understand that these aren't really PC things, so obviously we can't have that lore stand in the Disney Star Wars, but it's a huge slap in the face to Empire faction fans seeing it bastardized for the sake of Disney and EA going, look, women's! In the Empire, women were so few and far between in command or combat positions, but here comes Electronic Arts, hot off their ninja sword-wielding, robot-armed World War II game with women's because equality, and now the last 2 games they put out have portrayed women as high-ranking or special combat operatives in the Empire because, hey, Gotta get them brownie points from Kotaku and Rock Paper Shotgun, right? Now, before some vegan PC warrior steps up to the comments to say some real stupid shit, I would be all for Electronic Arts having the campaign character for the Republic as a female. This isn't a
failure doesn't like the women's
type thing. No, because I know some idiot on Something Awful is going to make that their take because they look like this and think every guy who isn't white knighting their bullshit must obviously hate women's and probably beats them too. It's that there is existing lore for this universe, and by constantly ignoring it, you're just tossing literally decades of fandom around that lore into the dumpster because you want to score brownie points with the loud minority of social justice warrior gamers. If you want strong female leads and playable characters, there are so many places to write them into Star Wars where, holy crap, get this, they actually fit in the lore. Madness! So again, before I get into my thoughts on Squadrons, fuck you Electronic Arts and Disney for taking my poor childhood franchise back behind their dumpster for another The Last of Us 2 style no lube ass pound. Get the goddamn real world bullshit politics out of video games when it's just being forced and counters the universe that's been established for, over 40 years now. So, Squadrons! The main focus of this game is going to be multiplayer. Buckle up and expect a campaign that's going to be similar in length to Battlefront 2, where its main purpose is to introduce you to mechanics and getting a grip on the game before funneling you into the multiplayer lobbies. While we haven't seen a lot of hard details from the creators Motive Studios, we know a few things off the trailers and a one-on-one interview with creative director Ian Fraser. Gameplay modes currently planned are going to be a 5 vs 5 dogfighting furball mode, and a signature mode called Fleet Battles, which will entail 5 players of each faction trying to win micro-objectives starting as an initial dogfight and then destroying escort fighters and finally the enemy's capital ship. One thing I am happy to see with this mode that differs from the last Battlefield game I played is that it seems either side can turn a match and end up the attacker instead of just being stuck defending and having one loss mean, okay, we have to hold this point or it's defeat condition time. While the ability for a defending team to push the fight from their own flagship back out to the enemy's defensive phase can possibly lead to some pretty drawn out matches, odds are if you're getting snowballed back from the dogfighting phase to the frigate defense and then your flagship, your team probably isn't going to magically turn the tide. But the fact that you could is, in my opinion, a really nice feature. Now, one of the other strange things that I hadn't seen anybody from Motive clarify yet is the whole 5 vs 5 thing. To say the least, having 5 ships per side attacking a capital ship fleet would be strange and feel nothing like a real Star Wars battle. Thankfully, Ian Fraser was a bro enough to respond regarding this issue and clarified that in Fleet Battle mode, you are supplemented with AI forces as well. So while the initial trailers and information I've seen out of media outlets didn't touch on this at all, rest easy pilot, you should still be in a target-rich environment, and frankly, I really hope that they don't show you which pilots are AI and which are the enemy players, so you never know which threat is actually that enemy ace. One of the other major details they shared, which is incredibly concerning to me, is that ships will have components to unlock. Now, the pessimist in me sees that big list of random BS abilities and loadout options as,
oh look, Star Cards 2.0, lovely!
This raises some major concerns with, well, better play at launch when everybody's on equal footing, because any Call of Duty or Battlefield vet who got the game late can tell you just how fun it is to grind those kits when everybody else has had them all and leveled them up. Hell, even Starfighter Assault in Battlefront 2 right now is miserable if you're thrown into matches with people who have maxed out star cards and you're sitting on nothing. But more than my concerns about Squadrons delivering the next take on star cards is the room for massive balance problems and, as usual, in literally any competitive game, metas. In the Squadrons trailer, the narrator highlights that there are over 50 components to unlock, and that's lovely and all, but in any game that offers stuff like this, there are always abilities, traits, perks, cards, whatever they may be called, that just utterly shadow the other 49 options out of that 50, and make it seem like if you don't go with X in your loadout, you're just gimping yourself until you've either unlocked it or realized that it's the clear standout pick. This problem almost always leads to communities crying for nerf X, improve Y, which leads to developers playing a never-ending cat and mouse with overall game balance. The other thing about this system that bothers me a lot both as a Star Wars fan and as a gamer, is the amount of people that are heralding Squadrons as the next evolution of X-Wing versus TIE Fighter. Please, if you're one of those people, stop licking lead paint. It isn't. It's not going to be. Just stop. At best, we can expect Squadrons to be a forced first-person version of Battlefront 2 Starfighter Assault with fewer players and, thankfully, no bullshitty hero ships running around juggernauting the match and making everybody not playing a hero ship feel like they're just there for a participation badge. First off, X-Wing vs. TIE Fighter was much more aimed at being a Star Wars-inspired simulation. There weren't gimmicks with components so you could tractor beam the enemy and then have your friend swoop in with his auto-aim cannon or multi-lock missiles. Look, EA, Motive, God Emperor Mickey, whoever, Star Wars was great before you guys decided to put your Call of Duty Battlefield touch on it. Please stop. I'll never understand listening to the creative director of this game talking about how he loved X-Wing vs. TIE Fighter and Star Wars and wanted to give people the experience of being a Star Wars pilot while also stuffing every hole of this game with stupid gimmicks that clutter the flight sim aspect and don't fit the universe. You know why people are so hyped and excited for Squadrons? Because people are hyped and excited for a Star Wars piloting experience. You don't need to dress it up in EA fuckboy gimmicks. Star Wars is grand and cool enough on its own. Please, just stop. Secondly, there is just an insane amount of silly crap in Squadrons, like saving up your turbo boost so you can Star Wars Tokyo Drift your fighter. Look, the X-Wing and TIE series might not have been graphically mind-blowing, although they kind of were for their time, or incredibly deep in simulation if you were to pick it up today and then compare it to a modern space sim, but it was true to the source material. TIEs flew fast, you had laser cannons, and your cool space gimmicks were staggering your weapon fire, setting power to weapons versus engine, and that was pretty much it. And guess what? It didn't need more than that. Look through all the videos on Squadrons, and there are so many people saying, "Oh my god, yes! I've been waiting for a follow-up to the X-Wing vs. TIE Fighter series." And that's just us old midlifers who played the crap out of that series. There are tens of thousands of gamers out there who never had the chance to experience those series in their prime because of age or gaming not being mainstream enough back then. Look, the point I'm driving at here is that comparing Squadrons to X-Wing vs. TIE Fighter is a bad idea. Now, I'm not saying Squadrons doesn't have any merit or that it can't be a good game, but the Force is starting to sense a lot of issues with this game that aren't going to surface until players start getting their hands on it, as well as what seems to be like a lack of understanding of the source material. And no, I'm not talking about every other member of the Empire and command structure suddenly growing a vagina, but in a GameSpot interview with the creative director Ian Fraser, he responded to a question about cockpit visibility and how you balance that for the different factions. You see, these things don't come up in movies or books because you aren't playing that experience. You're reading it, and there can be 1,000 other factors, and that's it. You don't worry about if it's fair and enjoyable that Han can just dumpster an entire flight of TIEs because you aren't playing the TIE pilot who is basically just there to be the Star Wars version of a red shirt in the movie or book. To the point, though, the specific question posed to Ian was a comparison of the A-Wing's cockpit bubble, which gives you clear vision in every direction, versus the TIE cockpit, which is always a round forward-facing glass that lets you see forward, and then TIE ships usually have a top hatch with window slats to see above. Now, to Ian's credit, he said he spent a lot of time doing his homework on Star Wars games like X-Wing vs. TIE Fighter and reading old boards during this game's development, and I'm glad that he put in the effort, but his answer that he came up with was really concerning to me personally. Essentially, he starts off saying that one of the things he noticed with their internal testing was that the TIE pilots only being able to see straight ahead helped them focus more, and that if anything, the limited view was an advantage. I'm not sure who he has testing because that has literally never been the case in my experience for any flight game I have ever played. Like, ever. As soon as flight simulators started hitting the modern era where you could look around cockpits and take advantage of cockpit visibility, it became an enormous advantage for quality pilots to keep tabs on the battle space. While Ian points out that even TIE fighters have the radar HUD that shows you enemy and friendly ship locations around you, there is much more to be gleaned by being able to visually see your enemy and how they're flying in direction, orientation, and so on, versus just tracking a blip on a radar and make informed decisions off of that. This isn't even touching on your ability to pilot tight spaces or battle debris littered space, being able to see your ship's clearances and getting a feel for them. where being stuck in the ball of a TIE with only the front cockpit is a major advantage for the Republic ships, especially when you're talking about things like VR or Track IR, where you can effortlessly look and make use of those cockpit views to see, oh hey, there's part of a destroyed cruiser there on my left. I can start banking now and clear that. Versus the TIE pilot going, I am one with the Force is with me. Please, Baby Yoda, don't let there be anything to my right as I try to shake this guy. The second thing he said in response to the question that really made me kind of go, what? It was in regard to faction versus faction balance, where he said he came across an old GameFAQ post about this issue of Imperial hardware versus Republic hardware, and the answer he chose to highlight was that, well, Imperial ships have less stuff, so you don't have to focus on as many things, as that was their advantage versus Republic ships with their better views and shields and so forth. No, that wasn't their advantage at all. He does point out that TIE ships don't have shields, as he makes the point that you don't have to worry about adjusting shields or managing their power, but he kind of misses or chooses to ignore the whole reason TIEs don't have shields. They're expendable. The Empire's advantage in space was sheer numbers. They weren't really superior, and one of the reasons that TIE aces were such a big deal was because you had to be stupid crazy lucky, because you were more than likely going to die as a TIE jock versus a Republic pilot flying about in his hippie starfighter with his green emissions fuel and environmentally friendly shield generators. Now, obviously we haven't actually gotten our hands on Squadrons yet, so it's anybody's guess if they've done things behind the curtains to further balance things between the two factions, but when given a question like this, those answers are incredibly concerning for TIE pilots who want a fair shake, because frankly using the in-universe lore for ship stats in a game environment that isn't true to the lore, unless Rebel pilots will be facing off against 5 Imperial pilots plus a 3-to-1 ratio of AI TIE fighters, that can create a nightmare of game balance when frankly TIE craft just weren't on equal footing to Rebel craft one-on-one. Now, I mentioned Battlefront 2 Starfighter Assault earlier, and since we're kind of on the end bit of people hyping this game as the next X-Wing versus TIE fighter, I want to touch on that a little bit before wrapping this video up. While we have so far only seen one gameplay trailer, what we have seen looks a lot like Starfighter Assault without the miserable ass hero ships. The combat looks very similar. We know that there are people in Motive Studios who literally worked on Starfighter Assault, and this is Electronic Arts at the end of the day, which means take something we already have, mix things around a little bit, and slap a new title on it. And while it might seem like I'm pitching Squadrons being similar to Starfighter Assault as a bad thing, I'm really not. Outside of the goddamn annoying super fighter heroes in that game mode, it's an enjoyable experience for what it is, a kind of casual level arcade Star Wars flight experience. That's my point and where I'm trying to drive this video. Squadrons has been announced for a week roughly, and already people are connecting car after car to the Squadrons hype train, and I really want this game to be great, don't get me wrong. But we've all seen the effect of people building games up prior to release with all their little hopes and dreams of what a game is clearly, obviously, no doubt going to be, only for reality to plant a fat mushroom stamp on their face and suddenly it's time to rage, riot, and burn the house down. I'm not saying you can't be excited for Squadrons, but from the general vibe I've been seeing both from media outlets, comments on Reddit, and YouTube, people need to seriously slow down how fast they're stoking the hype train boilers and just take a minute. Again, I want this game to be good, even if EA is going to bastardize the Imperial lore with women's. It's Star Wars, and it's a game based in the original trilogy timeline, and it's completely focused on space battles, a portion of Star Wars which is something we haven't had in a long time, and an even longer time since it's been done well. While I'm obviously sitting here poking holes in the announcement information, it might seem like it's stupid for me to be criticizing this game when we know so little, but I also see endless videos and articles doing the exact opposite as well right now, and everybody's fine with that, so I feel like there needs to be some kind of counter to that. Don't get me wrong, I'm incredibly happy that there's even a studio willing to make this game, because most would shy away from making a spaceflight only game based on Star Wars, and I'm hoping that this game does really well so that maybe we'll see more Star Wars space games, like future Squadrons games, or even a Star Wars version of Star Trek Bridge Crew, so I can finally command my goddamn Star Destroyer. I just think it's both silly and frankly irresponsible to see Electronic Arts dangle a new Star Wars shiny and go, well, shit, Engage the HYPErdrive, boys. As always, I am Failure to Report. You stay safe out there, and death to the rebellion.